product board, Jira, Trello, etc. And it was becoming too many things, too many apps. And I said, okay, it shouldn't be like that. And there has to be one app when you can combine all of these things in one place. And that's how Colanode was born. So how do we do it in Colanode? So there are a couple of things that I thought that should be important for a tool like Colanode. The first one is for the problem that we just mentioned, it should unify different things in one place. Typically, when you think like majority of work for majority of product or technical or software teams is you have sync, real-time sync communication, which is typically a chat. You have async communication, which is typically like some notes, project management, or whatever else that you might use, and you have some files. And I decided, okay, let's start with these three and unify all of them in one workspace. So this is the first thing that we decided. The second one is we decided to make it open source. And the reason why is because there are many tools out there that are similar. So one advantage or one differentiator of Colanode with others is it's open source, meaning that you have full control over your data. You can self-host it in any environment that you want, or you can even just go there and modify it and adapt it for your own needs instead of just using however the tool makes you to use it. When we did the open source, there are also other alternatives of open source, like for project management, chat, etc. But one disadvantage of other tools was that they had typically a lot of dependencies. When I tried to install some of them, I saw that there are, for example, listed 10 different things that you need to install just to run one of those tools. So one of our goals was to have zero dependencies and to make it as easy as possible to self-host it. And the last point, but from my perspective, most important, and something that we will talk more in this talk, in this presentation, is I decided to make it local first. And the reason why local first, like there are two reasons. First, I was a heavy user of Notion, and it was painfully slow for me. Like everything took a long time to load, and I said, okay, it has to work fast, but it also has to work offline. Even if you are in an airplane, even if you are like in a slow connection, or your server is not available, you should have access to all the data that are important to you. And also the tools that you need to use every day should be always available. And that's what Local First does. And we're going to speak more about Local First today. What the Local First is a term coined by this guy on the right side, which is Martin Clapman. He's a professor of distributed systems and Local First in the University of Cambridge. He's also the author of the book, Designing Data-Intensive Applications, which for me is the book that every software engineer should read about distributed systems, databases, or whatever kind of state management that your system has. I think everyone should read the book. And the idea of Local First, you can go to the Local First website. You will see some principles, how they work. But the main idea is that the apps in Local First should be always available, should be offline, and also you need to have control over your data. So this is like the whole idea behind that. So I said, okay, sounds easy, like how hard could it be? And that's one of the reasons that I said, okay, I'm gonna do it local first. And this is like the principle that went behind doing local first. For those that can't read, it says that we do this not because it is easy, but because we thought it's gonna be easy. And that was my journey with local first. I started it, and I worked on the local first part for about 6 months, and I rewrote the entire architecture about 4 or 5 different times. If you just go on the GitHub, you will see all the commits. When I decided to make everything open, you will see hundreds of commits and thousands of lines changed because I just keep rewriting and rewriting and rewriting because it has so many edge cases, but I just wanted to get it done. So let's see some of the edge cases in there. First, before describing the architecture and how it works, let's first talk a little bit about the data model. In Colanode, you can do a lot of things. You can write a message, you can write notes, you can create a database with different views, different records, and everything can be nested. So one of the models that we decided after many iterations is a node-based model. In Colanode, everything is a node. And that's where the name came, like collaboration and node, Colanode. A node can be a space, can be a channel, can be a chat, can be a page, can be a folder, can be a file, can be a record. But also, all of them can also have nested records. It goes like a lot of levels. For example, you have a space, which is like a root node. Then you might have a database, which has different records. These can be tasks, which these can be meeting nodes, etc. One record can have a nested page, which can have another database, can have a file, can have a folder, etc. So this has a lot of flexibility in terms of what the user can do, but also makes it very complicated in background how to sync everything. So keep this in mind while we talk about other things. This is in high level the architecture, how it works when you use Colanode. So it all starts from the user interface, which can be a web or a desktop, and also mobile apps are coming soon. And all the interactions that you do, for example, if you write a message, if you upload a file, if you take a note, or you just open a website, channel, everything is done locally with an SQLite database, which is embedded inside the app, or the file system. Then, if, for example, you write a message, it first is written locally, and then in background, a sync engine synchronizes it with a server. We will discuss more details about this. But just to keep in mind that in high level, this is very simplified architecture because each step has a lot of details that had to be done, but due to the time constraint, we are not going to get on all of them. Because, for example, one of the challenges is how can you do this in desktop and in web as well. In desktop, it's easy. We use Electron, so you have all the access in the raw file system, but web is kind of complicated. We use a technology called Open Origin Private File System, which is in new browser versions, which allows you to store data offline from a web application. And then you have to do a lot of different things. For example, you have to use SQLite with WASM, with WebAssembly in web, native SQLite in desktop, and another version of SQLite for the mobile apps that we are developing now and will be available soon. The first issue, the first challenge, or maybe the most painful challenge is concurrent editing. So here we have like a simple example. Let's say there are two users who are working on the same page or on the same node. And then the user one makes an edit to the page one. What happens in background, it is stored locally, and then the sync engine goes and tries to sync it on the server. But the second user, at the same time, makes an edit of the same paragraph. And then now the server needs to know how to synchronize these two, how to merge these two changes without losing any data. But that doesn't mean, to complicate things a little bit more, it doesn't mean that it's always real time. Because it's local first, what it can happen is that the user one is online and is making changes, and everything is being synced on the server, but the second user is offline for 2, 3, or 4 hours. So the user one for 2 hours can make a lot of changes, but the user two has the version 2 hours before, and he's making the changes. So you still cannot lose that. So some of the changes might come a long time after they have been made because it can be offline. And to solve this, there are different types of algorithms that do this work. You have one of the most simple that you use by most similar tools is called last writer wins. For example, whatever the last write came, just make it as the last version and store it in the database. But that doesn't work for us because one of the devices can be offline, and that's not actually lost write. It might be maybe the first change. The second way of solving this kind of conflicts is something that we all probably used, and it's called three-way merge. It's the difference and patch, and it's something that GitHub uses. And that's very, very good as an algorithm, but it's kind of hard because you need to do line-by-line changes. So it works for version control in the code, but it doesn't really work for like typical nodes or whatever, because you cannot force people to go in there and merge the conflicts or do the branching or whatever. The other version, which is like the standard one for this real-time software, is called operational transformation, or OT. This is what Google Docs uses, and it was like the first algorithm of this was called Wave, which was like the version before Google Docs. And what it does is this kind of conflict resolution. But one downside of operational transformational is that it always requires a server. So the server is like the ultimate authority, and all the changes have to go to the server to be synchronized and sent to other clients. And then we got other algorithms, which we also use in Colanode. They are CRDTs, or they are called conflict-free replication data types. What they do is they provide full peer-to-peer conflict resolution, which is not always 100% accurate, but what they guarantee mathematically is that the loss state will be the same for all the clients. So you might lose some characters or some small changes, which are okay, but the loss state will be the same for all clients regardless when the change came, regardless of the order of the changes, and also it's idempotent, which meaning the same change can be applied multiple times and they still will see the same result. This is what Figma uses in their production system for the real-time drawing, and we also use it, a version of that, and we were heavily inspired by Figma to build the sync engine. So how does the CRDT work in background? What it actually happens is that each change that you do, in this case, if you are working with text, there are other types of CRDTs, but let's get the example with hello world of the text. And let's say there are two users. The first user writes the number 1 after the hello world. The second user writes the number 2 after hello world. What happens in background is in CRDT, every change is stored as an operation, update, transaction, depending on the implementation of YGS. In this case, we use YGS, one of the implementations of CRDT. They call it update or transaction. So what happens in background, they create a new transaction, which is called insert. You add 1 after D, so after the keyword D, add 1, and the ID of that change is a combination of the user, which is a random ID, and the sequence of the change, which is, in this case, is the change number 1. But in the same time, without being connected to the first user, the second user adds the number 2. So what happens, we also say, okay, add the number 2 after D, which is like the ID of that change is user 2, but the change number 1. So what YGS does in background, it gets these two changes, and then there are multiple ways how you can do that to synchronize, because both of these are saying add it after the D character. So depending on how you do the algorithm, if you say the user 1 has, let's say, higher importance, then you say, okay, first put the number 1, but then after the number 1, put the number 2, because that goes in sequence, you don't lose any data. There are some algorithms that do the opposite, so you might see the 2 before 1. But the thing that YGS and CRDTs guarantee is that you will always see hello world 1, 2 whenever the changes came. So the loss state is always the same, but some details might be different from different implementations. In this case, we use the implementation is called YGS. It's an open source developed by an ex-Google engineer. Also, Martin Klapman and the team from University of Cambridge, they have an implementation of CRDT called AutoMerge, but based on the benchmarks, YGS has some optimization, especially in deletes, which are quite heavy in this kind of operations. So that's why we decided to use YGS, because it has a lower footprint and a lower, let's say, history size. So how does this actually happens in background? So when I changed that, when I added the number 1 after hello world in client side, we use in SQLite, we store a snapshot of that node, which can be a message or a page, which is displayed to the user. But we also have a persistent queue, which is a table in SQLite called mutations. And here we store all unsynced changes that happen on that client. And all of this happens inside one transaction. So if anything fails, everything is rolled back. One example of a mutation is node.update. We have other types of mutations that might happen. Not all of them are CRDTs. And what we do here is, for example, for the data, we have the operation that we saw before. So this is a mutation which is pending to be synced with the server. If the server is available, if you have connection, this mutation is immediately sent to the server. Otherwise, it stays on the client until the client connects to the server, and then the mutation is sent. But the user will see anything that they did. So what do we do on the server side? So let's say the mutation came to the server. How do we make sure all the changes are stored? In server, we also have a global table of all the nodes, which is the snapshot of the latest version of that node. And we also have a global table, which is called node updates. And here we store all updates that have been done from the clients. One thing that we use here is, you can see here, is a reversion. This reversion is a global sequence, which is incremented on each change. So we have like a global ordered queue of all the changes that happen to all the nodes. We do some optimization, so not all numbers or not all characters that you write are stored as an update, because that will make a lot of changes and it will bloat the table. So we do some debouncing mechanism in the client side, and we also have some background jobs in the server side that after a while, multiple merges that happen from the same user at a short amount of time, we merge them together so we have less space used on the server side. Okay, so we discussed how we do changes when they happen in real time. So what happens for the first time? Let's say you are using it in a desktop app, but you deleted everything in your app, or you got a new computer, and now you want to have all the changes in your desktop. How do we make sure that you have all the changes? So what we do here, we do a similar consumer pattern that Kafka uses, or other types of queues use. So we use some cursors on the client side, and we say, okay, for the space 1, the last revision that we got is 0. For the space 2, the last revision that we got is 100. And for chat 1, which can be another root node, the last revision that we got is 9,876. So the client connects the WebSocket connection to the server and says, okay, give me all the updates that happened for space 2 after revision 100. And then the server goes to the node updates table, gets all the revision in some batches. We use a certain amount of changes. They all go to the client merges everything, and then says, okay, I merged, get me more. If there is no current edit right now in the server to be synced, we keep it in memory in server, so we wait for new changes so you get them in real time. And that's what happens in this case. So if you are saying, okay, give me all the changes after revision 150, and you see that in database there are no revision after that, that's the last change, we just put it in memory and we wait for new changes. So how do we get notified for new changes? Even if you have multiple nodes, and let's say the client has been connected to the server node number 1, we persist it in database, then we broadcast in Redis with PubSub, a fan out, and we say to all other nodes, hey, a new node has been created in this workspace, in this root node. And then the server node 2, 3, 4, whatever number that is, they have some users connected, and they say, okay, this user is waiting some changes for this root node, so I need to notify him. But here is an edge case that can happen. We cannot send the event immediately, because during the time that we are doing this event changes, there might be some race conditions. So we cannot send it from in-memory, but we also say, okay, there is a new event, so I'm going to make another query in database to just make sure that the ordering is always correct, because there might be some race conditions and you might do some change along the way. Another interesting case when you do this kind of architecture is handling deletes, and that's more painful than you first think of. And the reason is because you sync everything, and everything is append only, but the delete deletes other stuff. So you need to find a way how to notify that that has been deleted. One way, the first version that we did, we created a new kind of update, which is called delete, and then deleted all older updates, but then that had some rough edge cases. So what we decided to do is, okay, when a delete comes, we delete everything. We delete only that node specifically. Then we queue in background a job to delete everything which can be recursive, because that can be a chat which might have like millions of messages. So we don't want to have a lot of latency. But also in the meantime, we create a new table which is called node tombstones. This is a similar pattern which is used also by databases such as Postgres. They mark something as tombstone, which means this has been deleted, we will clear it up later. But databases, typically they clear it by vacuum or whatever implementation other databases have. In this case, we cannot delete it anytime, because we don't know if a client has received the delete or not. So we always store the ID of the deleted node, and given that it's like a small number of data, that's okay for the server, and it's something that can be handled. But this might change in the future because we got a lot of requests from users that they want to do some kind of restore. For example, if you accidentally deleted a database with a lot of records, they want to restore that. And this architecture makes it hard to do that, so we might need to find a way how to handle that in the future. Okay, so I think you might be interested to see a demo how this actually works. So I'm going to do it like very, very shortly. Test, good. So this is the desktop app of Colanode. What you see here is like a typical, let's say, workspace that you might have seen in project management chat or whatever. You have here a channel, page, sorry. This is like a rich text page, similar as Notion, if any of you have used Notion. What you can do here is, for example, you can add heading or whatever. You can add, for example, bullet list, or you can add nested pages. And this is another page inside the page, and here I can go and write recursively. You can also have channels where you have like a lot of messages with reactions, replies, deletes, whatever. And for example, one of the most important features is databases, which you can structure in any way that you want. In this case, I created a database for managing tasks. And for example, here I have some status where I can change to test, archived or not, tags, team, whatever. I can display this with different filtering. For example, I want to see only active tasks, or I can display this in different views. For example, in Kanban view or whatever. Each of these records is a page in itself, and here I can just go on and create a heading or whatever. So this goes recursively. Also, another thing that we do is, for example, let's say here I have a list of clients for CRM or whatever purpose. And here I go to a specific client, let's say this one. And here what I can do is, okay, I'm going to create a database inside this. It's an inline database. And here I want to store some notes specifically for this client. So what I can do is I can add here, for example, date. And I have different types of fields that I can add. Let's say this is automatic whenever the date has been created. And here I can create, for example, meeting notes. And this has the date of today. What I can do here is I can create a calendar. Let's say this is calendar. And when I go to the calendar page, I say, okay, group me this by the date, and you will see in the today date, whenever that is. So this can go recursively. Then in that specific notes, I can say, for example, these are some images from the meeting. And here I can say, okay, give me a folder here. And then inside that folder, I can just go on and upload an image. One thing to mention, maybe you've noticed, but I'm totally disconnected from the internet. So everything that I did here is all stored locally in your file, and whenever I connect to the internet, everything is synced on the server and everything goes to the other users as well. As you can see here, you have some uploads queue. He says this image is pending to be uploaded. You have a copy in your local computer, which is stored in the directory of the app. Even if you delete the original image, this is still kept. And then whenever you are connected to the server, this gets uploaded, and then others can download it, see it, comment it, add a message, or whatever else to do. And one thing to mention is that for the files, they are like a special type of node. They cannot have nested children because it's hard to add child in the file because it's like the leaf node in the tree. And also to store files, you can use different kind of providers. You can store it in the raw file system if you have like a simple server, but it also works with S3, any S3 compatible storage with Google or Azure. And we'll probably add others in the future because the community might need them. In terms of the tech stack, we have a full TypeScript monorepo. Everything is written in TypeScript. There is no other languages. We have full server-side in TypeScript with Node.js. We use just Postgres and Redis. In desktop, we use Electron with React and SQLite. In web, we use React with SQLite in WebAssembly, which is a very interesting challenge to do that, and we'll probably write some blog posts about that, and we're also working on the mobile app. A funny thing to mention is, as I was writing this slide, an issue came in GitHub, which was in Albanian, full Albanian, like the first issue in Albanian, which said, why did you choose TypeScript? why did you choose TypeScript for such a big project? So that was an interesting question, so I need to answer that. In terms of the adoption, we have around 4,000 stars in GitHub. It got quite some trending posts in Reddit, in Hacker News. It was shared by some famous open source projects, open source profiles from Twitter, Instagram, and others, and the famous XDA developers forum for some of those nerds that used to do root in Android. You might know XDA developers. They also wrote a blog post about Notion without us contacting them at all. The Docker for the Colanode server, which is for the self-hosting, has more than 10,000 downloads, and we have more than 4,000 registered users who tried the Colanode Cloud Beta to just see how it goes, and a lot of more are self-hosting in their own environments. So this is all for me. Thanks a lot. You have here the links. Thank you.
All right. Really, really cool stuff. Congrats. So, question time. Here we go.
So first of all, thank you for the presentation. I'm really impressed with the product. I have around 5 questions, but I will ask only 10. I see you also provide a cloud hosting solution from Colanode. How well does Colanode follow the rules of GDPR, for example, encryption of the data, considering in such platforms there are very sensitive data sometimes that are stored? And second question is, how easy is Colanode to be integrated with other platforms? For example, I collect customer data from another platform, but I want somehow this data to be stored in a Colanode database. Okay. So that's all, yeah, only 5.
Thanks. So for the first question, that's a very important one. And one of the reasons why we started and decided to do Colanode open source is when we had a first version before Colanode, it was called Neuron, and it was not open source. And when we discussed with some potential clients, one of them was like in healthcare, they said we cannot use the chat at all because of the sensitivity of the data, we have to self-host it. And that was one of the most, let's say, important informations that we got that said, okay, might be important, and with the rise of AI, I think it will be more and more important. More and more organizations will want to have control over their data and host it in their own environment. So the whole privacy and the control of the data is something that we are working on. In terms of the GDPR compliance and the Colanode Cloud, what we do is we offer 2 different regions for Colanode Cloud. One is in US, hosted in US, and another one is fully hosted in Europe. So you can choose whichever works best. And also in terms of the compliance, we are just getting started with the cloud subscription. It's still in beta, and we are going to go through the route of certification or auditing or whatever is needed on that part. But what I can guarantee is that we made it very easy, which helps us managing Colanode Cloud, but others self-hosting it to make it as easy as possible to self-host. And in terms of the second question, that's very important, and one of the reasons why we decided to go with this node-based data model, which is easy extensible, because in the future we might have a lot of different use cases, for example, drawings, comments, forms, but also external systems. And one of the benefits of open source is that we expect that others will contribute their tools to be synced with Colanode. We don't have anything ready right now, but it's part of the plan. It's just some things in this local first challenge that we got into, we need to get first to make sure that one of the things that I want to make sure is the data is not lost during all the sync stuff, and make sure that and nothing is leaked, and then we can easily just make integrations, connections, or whatever on top of this. And also the flexibility of the databases features that you saw there. You can easily make what we are thinking to do synced databases. For example, sync this with GitHub and all the issues to be locally, or sync it with another website or whatever. And the benefit of that is that you have it fully local, so even if that platform is not online, or for example, you don't want to give them access, you can just create a view which is, everyone has it locally, they can see it all the time and then work on top of that. I hope that answers the question.
First we go there, and then we come back to you.
Hey. Hello, Hakan. I'm very impressed with the application. I like it a lot, and that was good work that you've done there. My question is, um, you also mentioned that deletions are problematic in these cases, and you mentioned the use of tombstones. Databases deal with that because they, after a while, they delete all that data. But you said that you want to keep that data indefinitely for the reasons you mentioned. But then, that's going to create quite a lot of bloat. So have you measured that since you first put it online? Do you have any statistical data how much space that is taking? Is it going to be a problem later on or not?
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's a very good question. It's something that I've been trying to avoid in different times, but I couldn't get like a good solution to this. This was like, at the end of the day, it's all about trade-offs, right? So this is like a trade-off that we decided to do. And in terms of the data, I don't have numbers. I need to check with the usage that they do in the Colonaut Cloud because I can't know for the self-hosting port. But from my perspective is that there are two things that I'm seeing in long term. The first one is that in the tombstones table, we use just IDs. And for IDs, we use ULEADs, if that's pronounced correctly. It's unique lexicographically ordered IDs. It's something like UUID, but it's ordered so that they have a fixed amount of length. It's 28 characters. We add some postfix in there, and that's all. So even if you go in the millions, that's probably the table can be in megabytes of data, which I think is a good enough trade-off given the benefits that you have. But in long term, the way that I'm seeing is that because this problem is not only with the tombstones, this is the problem with updates as well, which have much more data. And one way that I'm thinking about is there is a trend in the databases, which is right now getting a lot of hype because of the vector database, because vector databases have like in average 4 times the original data space. And what they do is they store the metadata in the relational database, and they offload the actual data to an object storage, which is S3, Azure, or whatever. And object storage is typically very, very cheap. You can have something, for example, if you use Cloudflare, you have 50 cents per gigabyte. If you use AWS, which is like the most expensive one, is 20 cents per gigabyte, which you can store a lot. So one option that I'm seeing in long term when we grow enough is to also offload this data in a cold storage, because either way you need it sequentially, so we can offload segments of updates or tombstones, and then we can store only the from revision to revision, and one row in relational database can be millions of rows in the object storage, and when someone requests a sync, you can just read that file and upload it. But I hope I can find a way to avoid storing them indefinitely, but I don't see a path in that yet, unfortunately.
Okay, one last question because we're out of time.
Okay, so, yeah, Hakan, amazing work, so just for the start. And my question is, I don't know if I got it correctly, so you're storing the revisions as kind of logs in which when a new client connects, you go and then you repeat those same transactions and then you come to a final state. Is that correct, how it works, or do you have something different?
Can you just repeat the last section? Sorry, I didn't hear correctly.
When a new client connects, so let's say you have 100 revisions in one node, and a new client comes and wants to take the latest state. You go and then in that specific client, you go and you implement all of those revisions till you get the latest state. Is that how it works?
No, the clients for the synchronization part, they get all the revisions in order. That's like what we need to do to make sure that the lost state is the same for everyone.
Yeah.
But that typically goes in different batches. We have some optimizations there. Like the most painful part is the first login when you need to get everything.
Yes.
That takes some time. You will see like a lot of changes in UI, but after a while you will be on sync and you will just get the changes.
Yeah. This is why I asked, because let's say, for example, you're using Colonaut for like 2 years now, and then a new client comes. Do we need to go historically for like 2 years and just go through everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you do that. So the drawback is the first sync, but that's like the benefits are much bigger than that. That can be done probably, for example, the demo that I did, it has over probably around 20,000 nodes and around 50,000 changes, and they are all synced in less than a minute. because like everything happens locally, you just get batches. So that's the drawback. But the benefit is that compared to other traditional tools, for example, if you open a page that has a long notes or whatever you might have, you need to download all the page all the time whenever you open it. In Colanode, you have it locally, but also if any change happens, you just get the delta of the change. You don't need to download it. So in long term, the bandwidth, the resource usage in server, and also the user experience is better. So it's a trade-off that we decided. It might not be the best option for all tools. If you're using Colanode and always just log in, that might not be typical. But if Colanode is something that you use every day, it should be fine. The WhatsApp works the same way, Viber and other full local first apps work in the same way.
All right, thank you very much, Hakan. Big applause.
Thank you.
Amazing work. I'm sure there have been plenty of other questions, so Hakan will be around. If you have questions, you can stop and ask him. I have a question before the next session. Do you know what vibe coding is? Raise a hand. Vibe coding. Have you done vibe coding? Yeah, raise your hand. Yeah, okay, all right. So I'm giving just some introduction into what the next session is about. It's called Context Vibes, and it's around the philosophy of build first, learn later. But to cut it in short, let's give a warm applause and welcome to the stage Jasper to tell us more what this is about.
Not USB, HDMI. I think it's good. Yeah. Okay. No clicker. Setting a timer. Oh. I forget about this thing all the time, so please help me there. I'm also setting a timer because time moves in a different speed here. I'm not sure if anybody noticed that, but there it seems longer. Here it goes crazy fast. Okay, amazing to be here. I've been talking to a lot of people today, smart people. I am tired. I assume everybody is tired, so I'll do my best. First, a few questions for all of you. Who does coding? A show of hands. Wow. Who uses AI while coding? Who likes it? Okay, perfect. For me, I made kind of a journey, and it has a bit to do with tooling. And let me start with an anecdote, a short anecdote about my studies, which is 30 years ago, also in a place like this. And I had a teacher, and he explained something about tools. So what we had to do, I did electrical engineering a long time ago, and we had to calculate the power that's below a complex waveform. Then you need to do some difficult integral calculations. I have no idea how that works anymore. But what he told us is like, yes, we can do that, but when I was working in the factory, he was working in some mechanics stuff, what they used to do is they would pick a piece of carton, weigh it, then draw the waveform on it, and then just cut it out and weigh it again. That also gives you this, my English is failing here, the oppervlakte. Anyway, it gives you the value that you need just by weighing it. So if you look at this quote, it's the same thing. At that time, the point here is if you use a tool, make sure that it's sharp. My point here is if I'm going to chop down a tree, these days I'm going to go to the hardware store and I'm going to buy a chainsaw. It's way easier. And we got kind of a very big chainsaw these days. That's called AI. So I've been working with AI, and I didn't like it. That was my third question. Like, do you like working with AI? And this was like a year ago. It didn't work for me. I was like annoying, asking questions, and literally at some point, and this is how I work. I was working with the AI, discussing my code, and at some point I was like, can we turn the tables? And I asked it, can you interview me about this project? Can you just interview me and walk me through it? And the first question it asked, it was like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, no, I'm a builder. I just want to build. I don't want to discuss the why. But I went with it, and I had a 30-minute conversation with AI. It's crazy. You're sitting there chatting with some machine about the project that I was doing, and it worked for me. And at the end, I asked that machine, like, what did we do? And it told me, like, yes, I applied the W5H1 framework. Anybody knows that? Why, where, when, what, how? And that's also how I think now. It's also what it was doing, because it was starting with the why. Why are you building this? What are you actually building before we start with the how? I like the how. I'm an engineer. I just want to build. But it made me think about, okay, how am I going to work with this LLM, with this machine? And I need to focus on this, why I'm building something, what am I building, and let the LLM figure out the how, because it can do that. So obviously, I went back to the how, because I want to build things. So I started a GitHub repository. You can find it here. There will be a lot of QR codes. Mostly, there are a few interesting there also with the product itself, but basically, this is Context Vibes. It doesn't have 10K stars. I think it has 5, maybe 6 somewhere. I would appreciate a star here and there, but honestly, that's not my point. This works for me. This is something that helps me think and structures what I'm doing. But take a look. There are interesting things there, and if I have time, already 5 minutes gone, I will go into some details there. But I said AI helps me think, because that's what changed over a year for me. So I made it work in a way that it helps me think. But to do that, you need to give it structure. You need to give it some context, some model, like W5H1. Thank you. And so I started organizing my work into 3 separate parts, just to make myself think. So one part that I do is I need my factory. And this morning we learned about rockets. You need real tools for that. Developers have different tools. So we have a factory, our IDE, our operating system. The only physical thing might be the computer. Then I need a library. I need manuals. I need information. I need prompts. So Context Vibes, a lot of it is just a collection of prompts. One of them is the framework. I'm not going to say the name again, but there's also like playbooks. How do I release a product? What steps should we follow? All a collection of prompts. And the last thing is what I'm actually building. So at some point, I am building a product. So starting with the factory, what I've done, and kind of amazing for me, I've built a CLI. Like, okay, I need some tooling. I need to work together with the LLM, and I need some integration. So I built a CLI. Doesn't make much sense yet. But the CLI, I'm using that in Firebase Studio. Anybody knows Firebase Studio? Okay. The great thing about Firebase Studio, and I'm switching gears here, is it works on my computer, but it also works on your computer. And actually, if you want to try it, it also works on your phone. You won't be able to read it, but you can try it. So if you scan that QR code or go to the repository, you will see this. And this is part of my factory. It's a template. So in this case, it's a template for the cloud, for a Cloud Run API server, written in my favorite language, Go. So what will happen then is it will be setting up a workspace, and a lot of things are going on here which I could talk for hours about, but think NixOS, think about it works on my computer but also your computer. So little detail, I have this nice computer, but there's only a browser on this one. I don't have any local development environment. It's just all in the cloud. So it works on your PC also. Takes a while to start up. Then you will see this. And this is Visual Studio Code. Most of you will know this. So what you will see here is my factory, a little bit of my library, documentation. It's one thing I learned, by the way. At this moment, I write a ton of documentation. Not for anybody else, I just write it for the LLMs. So documentation, and here is the interesting part. It's probably not readable for you, I'll explain it a little bit. It says, hi, good morning, I'm Tia. Tia is the part of the contact vibes. That's my library. That's the collection of prompts. And it uses the CLI to work together here. So basically, it starts with a conversation. So switching back a little bit, you click on a link, you select the template, and then you can start working. This is how all my projects works. So if I start a project for any customer at this moment, the first thing I will do is I will create a Git repository. That Git repository, it's my factory. So all my tooling is in there. Then I will create my library. And then I will start with the integration. So I explained a little bit about the factory. For me, very important that it's portable. So it's a Git repository, it's online. Then it is about how do you work together with your LLM? How do you collaborate with it? And this is where I went in a little bit in a direction. Also, yeah, you know, sometimes you also need to think differently. And I started like, okay, I need to give this LLM a personality. You are a experienced Go developer, but I also need something that has knowledge about documentation, or something that has knowledge about security. So I started creating personas for the LLM. And at some point I was like, okay, if I can give an LLM a persona, I can also give it a split personality. So I ended up creating a whole team within my LLM. Does this make any sense? So when I'm working, I'm actually talking to my team. I thought, okay, let's give it a little bit of structure. And the structure is, you're a Scrum team. So I have a Scrum Master. I have a document, somebody, it's called Scribe, manages the documentation. And this actually works. So what it does for me, it's completely fake, of course, but it works in the sense that if I want to have the LLM switch to the focus of documentation, I will ask Scribe. Another workflow, anybody who knows Google Deep Research? The other ones, go look it up. So one of the team members is Logos. So if I want to research something further, I will ask the team like, hey, have a discussion, then and discuss and come up via Logos, my researcher, with a research question. It will create one page question about the project that I'm working, specific to what I want to know. I copy paste that, and then I copy paste that into Google Deep Research, which is an agent-based, beautiful research tool. And then after 5 or 10 minutes, it will come back with a 5-page research about the subject that I need, based on actual internet information. I feed that back to the team, and then the team will be like, hey, great, we will work with this. So some of it is strange. On the other hand, it helps me think again. It helps me structure my mind, and it helps me work together with the LLM to actually do something. So another thing that I do then is I want to make my code, my way of working portable. So I know MCP, I know RAG, I know all that stuff, but my favorite model is Gemini 2.5, which has a crazy big context window. So one thing that I do, and that's where the CLI comes in, I work together with the LLM, and I create, no, not with the LLM, with the CLI, and I basically asked it like, export the whole code base. And not only the code base, it will also export the part of the library, part of the prompts, part of the personas. It will export the Git status, everything that's relevant. I'm also working on exporting the GitHub issues. So the whole context of my project into one big text file. And then, once I've created that text file, I will paste it in an LLM, and that LLM can work with the whole context. But I mixed up a few things here. The point here is also working together with the CLI and the environment. So in sequence, the shell environment, CLIs, they have been around for like 40, 50 years. And what I figured out, or at least, yeah, it works for me, that if you work with a CLI within this environment, it can actually kind of work together. So what you can see here is a conversation between the LLM and the shell. So what the CLI does is, okay, I tell it to do something. Here, the CLI will give information back, and you can work together. And then you create basically another abstraction layer. So for example, and I use it a lot in other ways also, is when I want to, for example, commit something, I will tell the CLI, the DLM here, commit it for me. I won't say git commit minus m plus the message. I will just say commit. And then it will create the commit message in the shell. So this is why the CLI, how I work together. Then here, you can see a little bit more of that part that I described before. CLI, describe my project. So what I do here is I generate the file, which is basically this file here. And then I go in a completely different direction. I open Google AI Studio. Again, different object. Who uses AI Studio? My suggestion is try it. And what I like a lot about it is you can play around a bit with it. Because you can, for example, you can set the temperature. And it actually matters. So if I start coding, I will set the temperature to 0.03. If I want to be a little bit more creative, I'll set the temperature there. It exposes the tools. But the point here for me is, here I've just pasted the whole information about my project, and the LLM will tell me, this is what we can do. And this is where the difference is for me between the way I work and the way, for example, Coder or other platforms work. I just made my whole project portable. I can choose the LLM that I want. I don't care if it's ChatGPT, well, I do care, but I can use it in ChatGPT, I can use it in any other code of any other model, and I can start working with it. But at some point, you also want to do something, you need to start changing code. The way you can think there is also that LLMs use tools, but LLMs also can create tools. So what I do here is at some point, okay, in this case, we want to do, okay, let's take a simple one. We want to run the Go mod tidy. That's a Go programmer's thing. So what I can tell it is I can tell it like, create the shell command to run this piece of code or to change this. Old school shell commands. I will paste it back into my IDE and it will update the code. The same thing, I can tell context types like, no, I can tell the LLM to do something with context types. This is where the CLI comes in again. So the LLM will create a shell command where it will just run context types with a certain command. In some way, it sounds a little bit hacky. It sounds a little bit like, what's going on there? Should I not use MCP? Should I not use any other integration? Maybe, maybe not. What I saw in the beginning, and this is the reason why I didn't like it that much, I was focusing very much on the integration and trying to get this working together with, I stopped that. I went completely back to the raw model and conceptualized, I need my factory. This is where Firebase Studio comes in. I need my library. This is where my whole organization in prompts, so it's my team, it's my procedures, it's my manuals. I combine that all into a tool in the CLI so I can make that portable and work with an LLM, have a discussion with the LLM about my code, and once I'm at a point that say, okay, start changing some things, I ask the LLM, it's actually a team member, it's Sparky, because Sparky knows about Firebase Studio, and I'll tell it like, just write me some script, copy paste, and done. This way, I haven't written any code, I think, for a year now. Everything is generated, but I'm in control. So I will go work together with the LLM. I still know what's doing, but the how the code is written, that's done by the LLM, and they're very good at it. And last thing, because everything is a Git repository, you can just let the script make the changes via the CLI and the LLM, and then you review the diff and you commit, so you keep the control. I forgot I had this slide. This is actually how it will look at, like, okay, this is a script with the explanation. So the point I'm making here is, because of the collaboration with the LLM, you can steer it, you can have the conversation, and then when you're ready, you let it make its own tool to update your code. So, concluding, first of all, this works for me. The approach also works on your computer. If the system works for you, I don't know. Please let me know, because it works for me, but that's a programmer's thing. I open source this because I find it interesting, and I would like to discuss it. I would like to have feedback on it. The other thing is, for me, it's something where I can easily start. So in the beginning, I showed you the factory, and there's a link there if you want to write anything in Go or any app script programmers? Nobody? Google app script? Okay, Go. There's also a Python template. You can just start and you can just start coding. You do not have to install an editor. Take a look at NixOS, but I'm going in the wrong direction here. Summarizing, what I've learned is working this way, I can focus on the why and the what. The how is more like sharpening my X, working on the context vibe system, working on my tool sets. But if I really need to deliver something, I focus on this, and it amplifies me. One of the QR codes is the DORA research report, also an interesting read. So all the QR codes point to something, but that's like how Google sees AI-assisted development. And the main conclusions for them is it amplifies what you can do. So if you're good at coding, it will amplify that. If you do not know coding, you can be in trouble. The second thing is, when I work together with an LLM, I create a shared mental model. And that really works well for me. I always try to find something that we both understand, that the machine understands and I understand. So an LLM understands Scrum. And because of the LLM understanding Scrum, I now understand Scrum better, because I honestly, I didn't do that many Scrum projects, but now I know, okay, you have like the epic, the user story, the tasks. So all my projects now are organized in that way, because it's easier for an LLM to understand that structure. Same thing, I create playbooks, or I tell it like, okay, use this framework to do so. Test-driven development, for example, that's also something that an LLM understands very well. So share a mental model and expose that to the LLM and tell it like, this is what we're doing. Last one, for me, it is about collaborating with the LLM. It's something that I work with, and I need to keep in control, and I can use it to amplify what I already do, and I can use it as a mirror to tell me like, okay, this is how I want to write this code, and it can also do the boilerplate for me. At the end, most important for me, conclusion is, it also makes me think. So if I use it in a collaborative way, it helps me think, it helps me structure information. Time really goes faster here. I'm at 25 minutes, so yeah.
So I guess we have time for some questions, if there are any from the audience. You're the master of questions.
To the topic the most. So Jasper, I just wanted to ask you, like, when you talk with a team, can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask you about team members. So do you define these team members in one long prompt, or these are separated entities which get triggered based on the keyword of their name or something?
Is on? Yes. Okay, then. Okay, I'll stand like this. It depends. And sometimes I'm lazy. I will just go into an LLM and I will tell it like, hey, I want to do this. And like, if I need to do something marketing, I will tell it like, create an amazing marketing team for me, and then it will create like the personas. But that's more ad hoc. If you look at context vibes, you will find, not all of them are done, but you will find for each persona a specific document. So context vibes is 3 parts. One part is the templates, really, that you can start just working. The second part is the CLI, to work together with the library, and the library is just document, it's all MD files. And yeah. Okay.
Any more questions? Well,
questions?
going once, going twice, going third time. All right. Thank you very much, Jasper. Very useful. I hope we will have people from the audience to contribute to the project. Why not? And explore it more.
It's, well, feedback, because sometimes I have, sometimes it works for me, literally, and that's okay, because I'm happy with it and I can work with it, and I'm just interested also if other people, how they work together with LLMs, if they work together with LLMs, and especially on the focus on integration. So I heard a lot of MCP today. I think it's amazing. I think also a lot of times I just don't need it. I can just dump everything in the context window, so why bother? So that discussion, please ask me later on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, so we're moving to the last part of Sunday, which is now going to be a panel where I switch roles from moderator to a panelist. So I'm going to invite to the stage the panelists, so Professor Elliott, to join me together with other panelists. We have Christian, and who else we have there? Yeah,
You're one of the panel.
You're going to introduce them anyway.
Thank you very much, Celik. So switching teams, thanks a lot for these 2 days. He was a great moderator. Please share for applause for Celik, first of all. Yeah, so this is a concluding panel, last day of the conference. Before the end, we are going to have a discussion on AI. We heard a lot about AI and open source and ML. But we have a division. We have panelists from academia, and we have panelists from industry. And we want to see what is the divide between the two in usage of AI and ML and open source, how we can collaborate more, and how can we, in the end, join forces with Flosk, for example, to make this collaboration even better. So even though you have seen the panelists' descriptions on the web page, I will just shortly share some of or present them shortly. We have Professor Ermin Rogova from academia, professor teaching courses in AI or related fields. Welcome, Ermin. Then we have also from academia, Professor Avni, professor of mine, also related courses to AI. Welcome, Professor. Then we have from industry, Celik, who was our moderator until now, and he is managing director of King Carta for Kosovo. I'm sorry if I'm mistaking something during the presentation. Entrepreneur and creating from AI tools. Welcome, Celik. And last but not least, we have Christian, founder of, or head of Save AI, co-founder and CEO of Save AI, in fact, a Kosovo's first cybersecurity startup that empowers SME with AI-driven security and compliance solutions. Welcome, Christian. So I will sit down as well. I have prepared some questions, even though I would like this to make a kind of conversation between the panelists, initially to see what divides us. We have heard a lot about AI tools, ML, open source tools. Let's hear from academia first, how they use the AI, ML, and open source tools, or do they use them at all? Or is there any misuse in using such tools? Professor Ermin?
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Elliott. I think we can all agree that AI is here to stay now. Although it's been used for quite a while, the latest boom has been because of large language models and generative AI in general. So to me, it looks like it is in similar terms as in the 18th and 19th century when we had the Industrial Revolution in England. So it's, I look at it as a tool that can do way more, way faster than traditional tools. It's like, for example, if you're trying to level a field, and instead of having 100 people with pickaxes, you have one person with a bulldozer. So I think it should be used. In my classrooms, I allow it to be used. Actually, I encourage its use. I tell them that you can use LLMs to generate the code in one condition. And the condition is that you must understand what is the code that's being spit out by the LLM, not just copying and pasting it and just taking it for granted. Because there have been cases, for example, when people have used LLM-generated code in production apps. So, and that ruined the entire thing, deleted the database, and it said, oops, sorry, at the end of the day. So you have to be aware of what the code is. And if a student knows what the code is being generated by the LLMs, it actually takes the same skill set in order to recognize what's being generated. It takes the same skill set as you writing it yourself. So basically, we are achieving the same goal. The only difference is that the work is being done 10 times and even 100 times faster. So I think we should take a look at it like this. Yes, use the best tools that are in your position, but just make sure that you understand what's going on. Why not?
Thank you. How about industry? Christian? Do you use the tools? Do you do it because it's faster?
Well,
do
at
you
least
take
we
ethical
bought the
considerations?
domain, which is with .ai at the end, so that doesn't mean anything. I always make the joke that AI actually stands for Albanian intelligence and not artificial intelligence. And the reason why I say this also is because I think AI is the best thing that could have happened to Kosovo and to Albanians in general, because we are a small country and the output from BPO is actually very little. But with the help of AI, it can be much more. And what I also say is AI makes stupid people more stupid and intelligent people more intelligent. So it is really important how to use it. And I think that AI is actually right now overhyped in the short term, but it's underhyped in the long term right now. So in our company, we are using it a lot. If I compare it to my previous company, which was Numarix, I had almost 200 employees. Right now in our new company, we have only 12. But what we built in 5 years with my previous company, we were able to deliver in a year and a half almost with Saibi. That shows you already how much you can actually do. And like the professor said, I think the biggest issue is right now, if people are using it just that they create the code and they think it's okay. The most important thing is actually now QA, to look what's happening after the code is written. And for example, I was just talking to my co-founder Hekaran before when he was here. We're talking a lot about LLMs, but I think one of the most important parts is to create micro models, which is much more important for day-to-day tasks. And for example, in our company, we're using a lot of micro models that are trained on specific issues. And I think also for the people here, it's much, because generative AI is now the buzzword and everybody now uses it. But when it comes to business, it's very hard to use generative AI because it uses so much CPU and so much resources. But the small micro models, for example, that we are using is something that are much easier to implement, and they create really problem solving for piece by piece.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Professor Arni, could you share some concrete examples, for example, when students use AI or when you suggest them not to use it, taking into consideration ethics and such?
Yeah, thank you for your question. In addition to what colleagues said earlier, just let me say that AI, as we see it recently, is something new, but actually it is not that new, because it's been around a long time ago. As a faculty, we have introduced AI and machine learning courses as even 15 and 12 years ago in our faculty. So we've dealt with it long ago, but recently the things moved so fast, things changed so fast, so we are kind of now seeing it as something new for most of the people. Students, of course, we talk to them and encourage them to use it as a beneficiary tool, but of course, always to be mindful of how they use it, how they treat it, and how they consider it. Back in time, people used to say, what's bad if you, is it bad if you don't know something? The answer, normal answer was yes, of course, it's not good, it's bad to not know things. Is there something even worse? The answer was yes, if you don't know what to ask for, then you will remain in that stage and knowing nothing. So now we've come to that stage. The potential is there, but you have to know how to ask to get proper answers, and then to consider it carefully, as colleague said, because sometimes it hallucinates if you don't get a real or good prompt. So it doesn't leave you with an answer, but you have to be sure, to be mindful, to consider it carefully, and then to decide whether you go on with that or no. Now we have come to the stage, kind of, we have the parties that use AI to get answers, and on the other hand, the other AI to consider whether it's good or not good. So we have, for example, of cybersecurity, someone is using AI to hack or to let's say, bad parties, while on the other side, we have to create and to use AI in order to protect us. So what is going on? We have AI fighting AI. Students have to be careful when using it and how they are using it and what they are using it for. So they have to be educated in this sense, and we are very careful to have them informed about all possibilities and to not be negligent about risks and ways how they do it. It is okay to use it to learn, but not always to use it as just a tool to finish tasks as fast as possible without not considering it properly and without not being able to explain what they got from it and how they will go on with moving on with it.
Exactly. As you mentioned, you can do it very fast, and I think industry is using it, Celik, if I'm not wrong. And that's why we are lacking the initiative to take more interns, because use AI instead of interns.
No, so I mean, AI is used widely by industry. It depends on the scale of the companies, right? So at Valtech, we have processes, internal regulators and approvals to approve tools. As Microsoft partner, for example, we prioritize to use Copilot, Microsoft tools. It took us 9 months to approve Cursor AI, which is among the best AI coding assistants in the industry. Windsurf is another one that is widely available. But in the meantime, until we got it approved as a company, I always encouraged team members in Pristina to try something out on their own. I remember there was a workshop organized 2 weeks ago with Cursor Meetup, and I got an email from Cursor AI, and they said, you are among the top 1% of users in Kosovo. We invite you to join for the workshop. And I responded, I don't know if I should be happy or sad because I am in the top 1%, because that gives you an indication that people are not experimenting. So if AI is this technology that everybody is talking about, encourage people to experiment, encourage people and students to build stuff, even for internship, for example, that you mentioned. This year, our focus was around senior engineers. Next year, we're going to open again the program for internship. But there is a big competition now for people to apply for internships, right? So for 5 positions, we have 500 people applying, so 100 for one job. And we use a system how we filter out students when they apply. It's like an online tool, AI-powered again, that monitors if they are cheating or copying or trying to work around their way. But when we filter out the candidates, when they come to the office, the way how you can stand out is by showcasing something that you built. In the past, that usually was like a to-do list or some simple mobile app, but 90% of the other people would not have something to demonstrate. Now with AI, you can build amazing projects that you can showcase to your future employer or even launch your own startup company with that. We saw some amazing student presentations earlier during the session today, so these are people that stand out.
Exactly. Thanks a lot. You mentioned Microsoft, and the next topic is open source tools. What is the drawback on using the open source tools? And I think as academia, they should use more, and they use more open source tools. And maybe there is a mismatch. After they finish the studies, they are used on some open source tools, and then they go to industry, and the industry uses other proprietary tools that they pay for. Is there any drawback, or what do you see in this? We are talking about differences.
Yeah, so Microsoft is a big contributor to the open source community, so we have to clear that out, of course. But it's not the same thing. So with open source tools, people are able to build, learn, experiment a lot. Proprietary, on the other hand, has the commercial side of it, the commercial aspect and focus of the companies. But it's not that companies do not work with open source technologies. But it depends. For example, us as a business, almost all of the clients that we work with, large-scale clients, enterprise clients, they prefer enterprise-grade technologies, which then enforce you to prioritize different technology stacks on that aspect. But then again, there's uses of Java as a programming language, Node.js as a programming language, and these are not proprietary programming languages, right? So these are languages that people learn at the university as well, and then they reapply them on the private sector, and then those get commercialized into package deals with clients and for businesses and so on.
Exactly. It's not such a big difference, to be honest. It's just for the discussion, because in the universities, I know that they use also Microsoft, so they pay licenses for it when they are open source tools, in a sense. Any opinion on this, Professor Avni?
So yes, our students use both types of softwares. We've seen so many examples of open source and the way how they should try to get involved with open source models. But on the other hand, of course, they have to be introduced even to proprietary software. So we use both of them, of course. Throughout studies, they are introduced to both types. So later, when they shift to industry, they will be confronted in both ways. So probably they have to move on and to learn better, even open source options or whatever industry or company uses. So of course, it's up to them then later how they will move on, of course.
Yes, but this shift makes it then difficult for the students, for example, to join immediately industry. I had also courses where we talked about certain open source tool, like for example, data analytics, and nobody in the industry in Kosovo, at least as far as I know, does not use that specific tool. Of course, the important are the algorithms and such, but the thing is that the industry then needs ready students to chip in immediately in the work. How do you do in these cases, Christian? Do you have such problems or not? Or you use only proprietary, you do some training with the students?
No, like for this company, we're actually using only open source. But for the people who are in the console, I know open source for quite a while, and I always try to use it a little bit, but I never liked it because it looked ugly. But the good thing is right now, if you look, for example, at AI, the quality between proprietary and open source is now very little. If you look at the LLMs that are right now, like DeepSeek or Qwen or whatever, at the end it's just a chat. So you cannot make so much design changes in there. And the quality is almost the same. Let's say, for example, most of you guys hopefully know DeepSeek. If you think about it, it is not that far away, or even Meta, or so that far away from the top ones. So, and most of the time you don't even need to have those super smart LLMs. You can use most of the jobs that need to be done need actually to be done by dumb LLMs. And they need to be much dumber than they are right now. And I think it's also a big, I'll give you an example from us. If you are with proprietary, you are not in control. If you are with open source, you are in control. And that is a big factor in something that is changing so quickly in such a short amount of time. Because I was just talking to Jesper before, you know, everybody of you hopefully knows Google Labs, and they bring something out that is amazing, and you want to try it, and then they just say from one day to the other it doesn't exist anymore, and you cannot use it anymore. In open source, even if somebody says, I don't want to continue, you can still continue by your own. So it is actually in your own hands to continue and to develop it further with the system.
Okay, thanks. And Elmer, how do you see this collaboration between industry and academia in leveraging AI and open source tools?
Well, I think universities should aim to use open source because they can use universities have limited budgets. So I think instead of paying for software, wherever there is a possibility, they should use open source and use that money to maybe buy hardware. So although it's, well, you can't say with 100% certainty because it is also comes to how easy people how easy it comes to them to use that software or that machine. I notice even here most speakers had Macs. so we're talking about open software, and we're actually using something that is closed source. But anyway, in universities, we're using software as a tool to show students what they can do. It's not really whether they want to use LibreOffice or OpenOffice or they want to use Microsoft Office, for example. All right, and I know a lot of people don't use LibreOffice or Google Docs, for example, and it basically comes from the adoption rate of that software, how much people use that. I would rather, although I can use LibreOffice or I can use OpenOffice, I normally don't, because as soon as I try to share that document with somebody else, something's going to go wrong. Although it's supposed to support that. So it comes partly. First of all, universities, I think, should try to use as much open software as possible, always making sure that students know that it is a way to practice the abstract notions that are using. But then, on the other hand, we also have to keep in mind that what the industry is using, and we have to adapt to that. So at the end of the day, we don't produce students that know to use just one tool and then they can't use whatever the industry is using. So it's a fine line, really, between what you think can be used and what actually is being used by the industry. We have to tread carefully.
Exactly, and I want to ask Çelik, if you know of any initiative, good initiative that incorporates or does a cooperation between industry and academia in a sense of learning something new that is not just the basics in the university, something that, for example, a tool that you use in your own company. Do you have such an initiative, or are you aware of such an initiative, in a sense?
I think there are some movements here and there, and there's some close collaboration with the Association of the Tech Sector, STIC, and the University of Pristina, especially with FIEC. There's the industrial board where there's collaboration. But I think what's important to mention is that the industry is so dynamic. We cannot wait, the university cannot wait to have the board to meet every 3 months to discuss something, because even when you mention like the tools that you teach students, even we as companies, sometimes it's hard to decide what to stick around, because beginning of the year there's something, 6 months later there's something else. Today there's Google Veo, tomorrow there's DeepSeek, after tomorrow there's Grok, and it's changing so dynamically. But I think it's important to teach students and to collaborate with the private sector around the basics, around the core of things, around the ethics, around the critical thinking, to the journey, so not just the result. And then in the meantime, all these other pieces come into the mix of the full picture for both academia and also for the private sector as well.
Yes, yeah, I'm aware also of industry boards, and I'm aware of some initiatives that certain professors have with industry itself. Professor Avni, in case of your studies in the FIAC, for example, you have the internship part.
Yeah.
How do you do that, or how do you cooperate with the industry in that specific topic, for example?
We're open to collaboration with industry, of course, and with other partner universities across Europe. And we have introduced internship as a mandatory course long years ago. So our students, our last year's absolvents usually have it to do it at the last semester. Throughout the last semester, they do their internships locally, or the best ones chosen go to the universities across Europe. And what we've seen as a, let's say, as an outcome, when they get back, usually they deal very good there, and based on information and feedback that we have from our partners, they are very happy, and year after year, the number of students that go abroad has increased. So it's kind of indicator that we're dealing pretty good, and we're looking forward to continue doing the best possible. So giving them opportunity to see what's going on, even across outside of local opportunities. So we try to do our best. We include them in the projects that we have, or we cooperate with partner universities for Horizon projects, for example. So this is the way how we include them in those projects and give them opportunity to learn or to see what's going on across Europe, across the world, across industry. Locally, our students are, let's say, involved or employed throughout many of the companies that are working in local industry sector. So kind of feedback that we have from them is pretty good. So of course we will go on trying to do our best.
Thank you. And Christian, you mentioned that you use quite a lot of open source tools. And how would you see the FLOSC being such a kind of intermediary between universities and your company, for example, specifically? They're a volunteer group. They could, I mean, you could share to them data sets, many problems that could go to specific students and then work on those specific problems.
Look, I'm in the board of STIC. I'm also in the board of ITP. And I have been now with the government for the last 4 days. I actually came yesterday, and we went through several tech parks across Europe, and we looked what they do. And a big factor is research. So it's business combined with research, and our tech parks mostly are only business with almost no research. And we were discussing a lot in the last couple of days how we could bring in the research factor into those parts, how we can bring research into the tech parks, but work with academia and also with business. This is like what was the success factor from those tech parks that we actually saw. And what I would see, for example, for FLOSC in this case, is to be the intermediary between academia and business, and to be able to become some kind of an accelerator. Because one thing that makes it very unique here in Kosovo is, first, look, test, okay. So if you look at, I used to work with India a lot for almost 15 years, and they bypassed the whole desktop evolution and went straight to mobile. I think there's something similar also in Kosovo that could happen, is where we actually bypass lots of the other industries and go straight to AI and to open source. Because one important factor going on actually already today is like data security. And if you work with all those other companies who are proprietary, you are not control of the data. Open source makes it that you are in control of the data because you can self-host it. And because we have a communicator, we have Flusk, if we could bring this as a foundation, I think this would be a USP for a small country like Kosovo is to be competitive against other countries. And I think if Flusk could put themselves into this trifecta between university and business, would be a huge success for all three involved.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. We have wonderful youngsters, and they have wonderful ideas. So that might be quite interesting. But do you want to add anything, Elmir, or we should go to the audience and to get some questions from them?
Well, I only wanted to say a couple of words when it comes to using LLMs, either in universities or in companies locally. And I agree with my colleague here, because I think we don't have to actually use general models that you require a lot of data, a lot of processing power. We can have smaller micro models that specialize on what we want to do. For example, you can get a lot of models that you can run locally when it comes to, for example, coding or whatever you're trying to do. So we shouldn't really, we should know it as a concept. When it comes to actually using it in-house, we should focus on those, and we should try to have labs where we can run LLMs locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. Let's take some questions from audience. Most probably they are interested in the topic.
Thank you. I have a question and a criticism. So I won't bother to make the second as a question because it's a direct critic. So I didn't, first the criticism, or just exaggerating to calling it as such, I don't remember who said it. I didn't have my glasses on, so I couldn't see who it was. But someone said we have to fit in with the industry. We don't have to do anything. In the sense, not just with the industry per se, but in general, there is this idea that something is occurring, whatever ever occurs, and we have to fit in. We don't have to do anything. We are subject, and sometimes we want to make the world around us fit to a particular vision. So we don't have to go with any wave, you know, and you can personalize and shape waves in terms of the economic constructs of that country as well. The second thing was a question. I really like the fact that someone said we could jump straight into AI, and we actually have a statal model for that in Estonia, which is a very famous case right now. Right after the fall of communism, they were offered by Finland the analog system, and then they rejected that and they went straight to digital. And they had amazing success at that, and I can see countries like Kosovo and Albania doing something similar, but they don't. So what do you think are the actual blocks, whether it comes from industrial readiness levels or whether it comes from what is offered in academia, to actually make such a jump? Is it a political will? Is it a resources thing? Is it the way that they are shaped? Like, what is the block to actually do a jump like that and make it work? Thank you.
Yeah, I honestly believe in this, the last 4 days were really eye-opening for me. To make this happen, it cannot come just from business, it cannot come from politics, it cannot come from Flusk or whatever. It needs to really to be a collaboration. We as Albanians are very good in working in silos, so we are very bad in collaboration. So to actually make this happen, it needs to be there needs a little bit to be a little bit of funding from the government, for example, and I think it's really about the collaboration and a very clear vision. I think what is absolutely missing right now is a very clear vision. I think nobody of us said that we need to fit with something. I think we should actually create the vision for ourselves that makes us known by other countries around and by other businesses. Because right now, if you ask people abroad what are we known for, it's call centers and maybe some development. So we need to actually bring out a vision which can correspond with those three pillars that I said, with government, academia, and with business, and bring them into one straight vision that everybody can work together. But for that, we need to have also some people in the forefront, which we also don't have, that actually can push it forward. So I think that's the only possibility how we can do it. Or maybe with one company who can be like the star, and we are very good at copying, and so they also try then to copy this success of that particular company.
What happens with open source projects, let's say, the problem is that they lack funding, basically. Huh? So even if for some phase of research or building something new, they work on till they have funding. But what happens with that later? So maintaining it is a big problem. Without proper funding, nothing goes on for lasts longer. So basically, this is what's maybe happening with a lot of small projects and ideas around here. So all stakeholders have to unite, as Christian said. So this is maybe what we're lacking mostly at the moment.
One more thing that I wanted to say. For everyone who is here sitting, and I hope for everyone in Kosovo and Albania, forget the word grants, okay? So there is no free money. If you want to create something that really creates something useful, you have to solve a problem. And when you solve a problem, the money comes. And we're not talking about grants, or when I said government, I said only the initiator, not something that pays your salaries or creates the company or something. To create a company, you either need to create something and make money out of it, or you need to attract investors who are actually going to pay for it. And again, open source is a very good source for that, because I'm working with lots of investors. And the number one thing that they ask me right now is defendability. So how can you defend what you actually built so nobody else can copy it for you? If you work with those proprietary softwares, these are not your own softwares. If you work with open source, it's basically yours that you can adapt for yourself, and you can say, this is mine. So try to keep this maybe in mind.
Thanks, Christian. Somebody else?
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you for the panel. My question is an industry-centered question, and it would be, what would be your advice for students in order to make the switch from open software into proprietary software as easy as possible, since proprietary software tends to be closed off to the general environment?
So if I understand the question correctly, is how do we recommend to a student to move from open source to closed source, to proprietary software? Well, I mean, I don't know if I'm understanding the question correctly, what the point here is. There's no recommendation that we do to move from this to that sort of technology. I don't know what's in your mind when you say proprietary technology in that sense. Well, I mean, speaking for my company, we don't have a specific proprietary-owned technology that is only specific to one type of client or one type of employee. Maybe there are other companies that do that, so I cannot answer your question in that sense. But what I can do is I can tell you, like, if you learn only one specific closed source and you become very niche and very expert in that technology, let's say, if there's a market and there's a demand for that, you might have like a potential career in that very narrow and very niche industry. You might become the best in that area if that's something that you want to pursue. Usually what I always recommend engineers is to experiment around with technologies, try to find their best suitable tech that they love to do. Like if they want to do DevOps, they choose one platform that they're best, like AWS or Microsoft or Google, and then go to some other experimentation, but have one platform which they're known about. Or backend technology, let's say you are really good at Java or .NET or PHP or whatever, but you also experiment with some other technologies. Just try to find one basis at which you're good at, and then just stack up the other technologies onto it. And similar you can do with proprietary technology, like to learn it on top of something else that you know, but don't get stuck on it, because the way how the industry is moving, like you can see like Salesforce, for example, I'm mentioning a very closed and proprietary company because the question is related to that. There used to be a big demand for it. Now the demand is slowly dropping in terms of expertise and development expertise in that area, because they are slowly replacing it with something else. But in the meantime, there's a big number of startups coming into their territory as well, with even open source technology to grab onto the clients that they have.
Yeah. So it's very obvious that we are a lot of AI consumers. It was the same situation with open source consumers a couple of years ago. But the contribution back was in very low level, especially in open source software. So is there any strategy, especially for universities, how you plan to contribute on AI? Some stuff that I have recognized lately by working on the project is, let's take the cultural stuff like the language text-to-speech or speech-to-text. A lot of countries, the universities contribute to train this model, so the language can be used by AIs by reading text or translating, whatever. But the Albanian language is still sluggish in this aspect. So is there a strategy from universities how to work together and contribute back on AI models, not just consuming it?
We saw, so yesterday and today we saw some presentation about this issue. So the presenters mentioned that it is a kind of long problem with Albanian language due to specifics of Albanian language due to different issues. So we've had here and there, we've had small projects, solutions, trying to find solutions through someone's master thesis or bachelor or whatever. So we have tackled it a bit here and there, but of course not reached the point that we can say we have solved the problem and now we have the software or whatever we call it that has such a, let's say, potential to cover everything. Kind of good idea is what Flosk has presented 2 or 3 years ago to us, but somehow it didn't move on so fast as they supposed or hoped like we did. So this Mozilla voice tool that they have presented and open to the public to contribute and then to help someone else work on top of it. We'll see what will happen, but as we saw, there's still no qualitative result regarding that issue. Now things have changed. Maybe someone will come up with some different idea using some AI tool that will make switch from other languages to implying same rules for Albanian and resulting in something good. We'll have to see and wait and see.
One last question. Oh no, we have some.
Yes. Here.
Besford, do we have time for 2 more questions? Yes? Yep.
Okay. One more question here from me is more for the academia. I'm really interested to know how did the recent progress in generative AI impact your evaluation or grading process?
Okay, thanks, Hakan. Yes, we have to be very careful. Now, we have, especially technical sciences, we have an advantage because, to be honest, I don't know how arts are going to deal with this, or if you ask ChatGPT to write an essay for you, I don't know how they're going to have to, they're going to market. Of course, there are tools that will check whether the content is AI generated, but there are also humanizer tools that try to humanize the text that you're. So it's like a thief and police work, you know, one being ahead of the other. But in our field, what I've tried to do, because I've tried also to stay one step ahead. And as I said before, I actually encourage my students to use AI. I asked them, and when I said before, when I say you have to understand what it's spitting out, all right? Yes, use it, but understand it fully. Now, the way that I mark their work is I give them a project, they can use LLMs, but then when it comes to me checking the project, they'll have to come and defend it, right? I will ask them to put no comments there whatsoever. So if I ask them, okay, whether you type this code yourself or you use generative AI to do the work, doesn't really matter to me. Do you understand it? Yes. Okay, so tell me what this line does. And if they know that, I've accomplished my goal. My goal is to get them to learn that bit. So whether the code is written by generative AI or they've typed it themselves, doesn't really matter. Actually, I prefer they use generative AI because it's a tool that they can use to make their coding a lot faster. But the point is that they have to understand it so that they don't fall into that trap of using code they don't know what it does.
Thank you very much, Professor Blaine. Last question.
Thank you. Thank you to all panelists for sharing your views and discussion about the open source software and also collaboration between academia and universities and industry in Kosovo. Maybe just a small, no comment, but just to echo what you said before, there is a recent publication from Stanford University. University published just in late August about how AI disrupts the whole ecosystem, especially the juniors. So this affects, AI affects especially junior software developers, because as we know all, we use this automation exactly to replace the junior software developers. And the document is publicly available. I really encourage everyone, especially young students, to read it and to check how this will improve their skill set in order to be accepted for the job. And my comment and question is to our colleagues coming from industry. I really appreciate you being here. This is a sign of your commitment and collaboration. But maybe you can share 1, 2, 3 projects that you're planning to give back to community in next year, in 26. Thank you.
Well, for next year, I don't have an answer for next year, but what I can say throughout the years, we always contributed to the open source community, especially led through our CTO, Edon, who's sitting here in front. He was leading these initiatives throughout the years with the team internally and externally. And this is how we gave back to the community. We try to encourage students to contribute. I'm always happy to see like projects from yesterday and projects today that there's more drive from people to do open source projects. But as it was mentioned from the audience, we're still on the consumer stage, so we're not contributing at the level that other countries do as well.
You know, I always take like an example with dynamite. You can take a stick of dynamite and you can do tick, 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 nothing happens. But if you take a hammer and you put on it, it's going to explode. So what we are trying to do, I sold my last company 10 months ago. And honestly, I wanted to take 1 year off and just to chill because it was very hard 5 years. But the contribution that, for example, myself and my co-founder would like to do is to create something out of Kosovo with those technologies that are being presented here, so that it becomes like something that can be followed. I think it's almost more important to have something that people can see as what is a gold standard and then go after it, than to have lots of small contributions that don't affect the mass. So I think what is really important is also coming back to what you said about the juniors. I had a talk a couple of weeks ago where I said the juniors are all fucked, I have to say, because it's going to be very, very hard for them in the next couple of years. And I think what is really important is also for everyone here, Kosovo has become a BPO country, an outsourcing country, and it's very, very important to become a product country, and only if we get a product country, then we have enough people and even the juniors to become part of it. If we stay a BPO country, then the juniors are going to have the most problems going on forward to get a job or to exceed.
Thank you very much for the questions. Thank you, panelists, for the insightful answers and comments. And I give now floor to Çelik once again to continue the...
Thank you, Elliot. All right, switching hats now, back to moderating. Thank you very much for the last session, which marks the sort of closing of the final day of SFK 2025. But before we go, there's one last thing that we need to do. Of course, invite Mr. Besford Guri to give the closing remarks, to thank the sponsors, the volunteers, the amazing people in the audience, which you guys deserve an applause. You've been here throughout the day. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, the speakers. Thank you, the sponsors. I would like to invite the organizing team on the stage, please. And then I would like to invite as well all the volunteers to join on the stage and to thank them as well. See you to the next SFK.
Well, before you go, there's one more thing you forgot to mention. You forgot to mention, when is SFK 2026?
Next will be again in October.
Okay, see you next October. Good night. Thank you, everyone.